All right, old school NBA fans, self-researched NBA facts. I got another video for you. I just want to say thanks to anybody who watches my videos, subscribes to my channel. I appreciate it. I put a lot of work into this. I've got a lot of information. I'm sure some of this stuff is pretty common knowledge or whatever, but putting it into the proper context and going into more depth with it, you know, that's really what I'm trying to achieve here. Debunking all the narratives I hear all the time, just like you guys probably sick of it just like I am, just distorting facts and whatnot, that's when I figured it was maybe time that I get into the fight a little bit, because the stuff that I heard is just so ridiculous and the weak-minded people jump on it, treat it like gospel and run with it. Anyway, so in this video it's to talk about another narrative out there. Why didn't Jordan win the 80s? Why couldn't he take a team of a bunch of mediocre journeymen and be champions and beat historically great teams? It's just ridiculous. Why didn't Jordan win in the 80s? He only won when Pippen got there. Blah 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 blah. The Pippen thing was just pure coincidence. I believe any wing player, solid good wing player, would have sufficed. If you would have had Clyde Drexler or Dominique Wilkins, somebody like that, obviously we're talking about really good ones, but same result, guarantee you. What I want to talk about is what the league was like back then compared to the LeBron James era, say from, even like 2000 to today. Totally different. You had 23 teams in the league versus 30 now. And here's why that's significant. When Michael Jordan came into the league in 1985, there was 23 teams. There was 13 in the West, 12 in the West, 11 in the East. So when Jordan came into the East, the schedule was you played the teams in your division, the other four. There was 5 in the Central, there was 5 in the Atlantic, or was it? Actually, I think it was 6 in his division in the Central and 5 in the Atlantic. Anyway, so you had to play the teams in your division 6 times each, and you had to play the teams in the Atlantic 5 times each. Well, in 1985, Boston was 63-19, Philly was 58-24, Milwaukee was 59-23, Detroit 46-36, New Jersey was 42-40. 42-40. Well, right there, that's 27 games. 1/3 of your schedule is against those 5 teams. There were only 3 teams under 31 wins. So there wasn't a lot of easy wins back then. There was no bottom feeders. It was a top-heavy league. There was no bad teams to beat up on to absorb a bunch of wins. Now, if you were the top-heavy Boston or Philly or Milwaukee, yeah, you were winning because you were just better than the other teams that you were playing. You only got to play the West 26 games. That's another third of your schedule. Then the other third would have been the mediocre to bottom teams in the East. That's how it was done back then. Now, in 85, the New Jersey Nets were 42-40, right? Okay. The 42-40 Nets of 1985, they had a really good team, but they just weren't upper echelon like Boston, Philly, and Milwaukee. So that's how they fell into 42-40. This team, in my mind, was better than the 2003 Nets that went to the finals. Okay? Here's who they had. They had Otis Birdsong, who was averaging 20.6 points a game on 51% shooting. That's your shooting guard. He was a 4-time All-Star and 2-time All-NBA. You had Buck Williams, 18.2 points and 12.3 rebounds a game. Buck Williams, a 2-time All-Star, and he was actually, I think he was a 3-time All-Star, and he was 2 times All-NBA, and I think he was 3 or 4 times All-Defense. Michael Ray Richardson, the point guard, 20.1 points, 8.2 assists. Now, Michael Ray Richardson, his career he He got 3 steal titles, 1 assist title, a 4-time All-Star, one of 16 players ever to lead the league in 2 of the 5 major stat categories in the same season. They had Mike Gminski, anybody doesn't know who he was, a very solid center, up and coming. And they had Daryl Dawkins for part of the year. And Albert King, the guy who filled in, was also serviceable, averaging 13 points, 49.1% shooting from the power forward position. Pretty good considering, he was a fill-in. He's like your number 5 starter. That's the 6th seed. That's a good team. The Washington Bullets in 85, they were 40-42. They had Jeff Rulin, a 2-time All-Star of that year and the year before. Gus Williams, integral in the finals victory Seattle had back in 79. He averaged 20 points, 7.7 assists. 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA. One of them was first team. Jeff Malone, if you don't know who he was, he played for Utah later on with Stockton and Malone. He was giving you 19 points a game on 50% shooting, 2-time All-Star. Greg Ballard was probably number 4 or 5 guy. He's giving you 13 and 6.5 rebounds. Cliff Robertson, not to be confused with Clifford Robertson of the Portland Trailblazers later on. He was giving you 16.7 points and 9.1 rebounds, a career 17.2 point per game score. Good player. And you even had Rick Mahorn on that team. I know you guys know who he is. Played on those Detroit teams, got the all-defense. Anyway, those are your 6 and 7 seeds. This was a tough conference to get wins. The Bulls were 38-44 that year. But this is what you had to deal with. You didn't get to pick off a bunch of easy, cheap wins. You had to play teams that were as good as you were. And the Bulls just didn't have anything. They had Orlando Woolridge, a serviceable small forward, and the rest of his team were all career journeymen. That's it. The next year I'm going to point out is 1987. Now, 1987, the Bulls were 40-42. In Michael Jordan's Central Division, 3 of the 6 50-win teams in the entire NBA were in his division. Okay? 5 of the top 6 players for MVP were in the East. That was, Barkley and Bird and, Moses Malone, all them. Anyway, Philly had some injuries, and they also lost Moses Malone that year. But Boston, Philly, the Bullets, Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee, all good teams. In the All-Star game, Boston had 3 of the All-Stars, Philly had 3 of the All-Stars, the Bullets had 2 of the All-Stars, and the Pistons had 2 of the All-Stars. 10 of the 12 All-Stars in the whole East was on 4 teams. There you go. The only other ones was Michael Jordan and Dominique Wilkins. Again, this is what Jordan was dealing with. Now, the East was just tough. It just was. Again, you had to play all these teams 6 times in your division each and 5 times in the Atlantic Division, the other division in the East. People just don't seem to understand that. They're basing their stupid, warped opinion on the schedule that goes on now. That's not how it was. So you're playing these teams a lot more. There were no easy wins, really. There was only a handful of teams that weren't that good. I mean, let's look. The 24-58 Knicks. This was the bottom team in the East. They had Patrick Ewing. He missed 19 games. Bernard King missed the majority of the season with an injury. Gerald Wilkins was averaging 19 points. Bill Cartwright, 17.5. Trent Tucker, 11.5. They had a top 75 player in there. I mean, they had a good team. 24-58. Not that good in 1987 compared to the East. Cleveland was 31-51. Here's who they had. Ron Harper giving you 23 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Hot Rod Williams giving you 14.6 and 8 rebounds. Rookie Brad Daugherty, rookie Mark Price, and you had Craig Elo on that team. They were 31-51. And they had good players. Michael Jordan had journeymen on his team. He had John Paxson, was like the 3rd best player. Dave Corzine. I mean, come on. What? I mean, these guys were bums. Let's face it. You had Charles Oakley. And, of course, people always go, oh, you had Oakley. Well, here's who the power forwards were in the East in 1987. Kevin McHale, Charles Barkley, Buck Williams, Kevin Willis, and Terry Cummings. Do you really think do you think Oakley was better than any of these guys? No. Kevin Willis was 53.6% shooter. He was 14th in Defensive Player of the Year that year. Charles Oakley was giving you like 14 and 13. Yeah, he was good, but was he elite? No, he was not. The other power forwards in the conference were Bill Cartwright, Terry Catledge. He's probably somewhere in with these guys. Hot Rod Williams, Herb Williams, who was averaging like 16, 17 points a game. Sidney Green and Rick Mahorn for Detroit. Oakley was only a 44.5% shooter as power forward. It's not that great. Okay, he was good, but he was a middle of the pack at best power forward in 1987 when you had McHale, Barkley, Buck Williams, Kevin Willis, and Terry Cummings. I mean, these guys were all, I think all 5 of these guys at one time in their career made all NBA. Oakley didn't. And anyway, this is what the East was like then. It was tough, it was top heavy, but there were not bottom feeders. You're not going to find any 15 and 11 win teams in the East in the late 80s. That's just not how it was. It was tough. You played these teams a lot. It was just for a team like Chicago who had one superstar, one average player, and journeyman, you had no shot against these teams. Like I just told you, 4 teams in the East made up 10 of the 12 All-Stars. Those were the cream of the crop teams. I mean, and the other team, Atlanta, was 57 and 25, who had Tree Rollins, Doc Rivers, who was like a 15 and 10 assist guy that year, Kevin Willis, Dominique Wilkins, averaging like 29 points a game. This is what you dealt with in the East. I mean, Milwaukee was 50 and 32. Terry Cummings, Sidney Moncrief, Paul Pressey, Craig Hodges. These teams were good. I mean, people just can't understand that. Michael Jordan did not have anything yet. And it wasn't like he had LeBron's supporting cast in the early 2000s in the East. No, this was a worse than LeBron's supporting cast in the late 80s in the East. You're not doing anything at all until you get a little more help. It's just not possible. So anyway, that's it for this video. This is something that's really been bugging me a lot. I mean, people just do not understand. Like, here's the prime example. In 1985, there were 2 teams in the East, 2, that had under 31 wins. This year in 2024, there's 2 in the whole NBA that had under 31 wins in 1985. 2. This year in 2024, 7 teams under 31 wins. You can pick off those easy wins. Couldn't do that back then. People just, logic and math is all you need to come to these conclusions. Opinions got nothing to do with it. Logic and math. But it eludes so many people. But anyway, that's it for this video, and probably have one later on maybe. And anyway, thanks for watching. That's it for now.